the Mafia boss who watched over the Waitress and claimed her at last. Snow fell hard over downtown Chicago the night Vincent Caruso stopped on the sidewalk outside Lombardi's. His coat gathered cold flakes, but he didn't move. Through the restaurant's wide windows, he watched a young waitress weave between tables with steady hands and a warm, tired smile. Her name was Destiny Williams, though he didn't know that yet. He had just come from a meeting where men waited on his decisions, where a single command could shift control across the South Side. Power usually steadied him. Tonight it didn't. Destiny brushed a curl from her face as she laughed with an elderly couple, balancing two heavy trays without slowing. Something in the calm strength of her movements pulled Vincent out of the world he ruled. For 20 minutes he stood there, breath rising in the freezing air, unable to walk away. In that moment he decided something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He would protect her quietly. He would never interfere with her life. He would wait, no matter how long it took, until he could approach her as a man she could trust, not a name people feared. What would make one of Chicago's most powerful crime bosses stand in the cold just to watch a waitress work? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Let's begin. Vincent returned to his penthouse the night he first saw Destiny, but sleep never touched him. The city lights stretched across the windows as he sat in the quiet, replaying the way she moved through the restaurant. Most women in his orbit tried to catch his attention. Destiny hadn't looked at him once, yet she held him in place longer than any threat or negotiation ever had. By morning, he needed to know who she was, not out of ownership, but out of concern he couldn't explain. He gave his head of intelligence a name and a location. Nothing more. He didn't allow speculation. When the report landed on his desk hours later, he read every sentence carefully. Destiny Williams, 24. Born in Detroit. Moved to Chicago after her mother passed away. Nursing student at Harold Washington College. Full-time server at Lombardi's, part-time caregiver for a neighbor with limited mobility. Sends money every month to help her younger brother, who's still in high school. No criminal record. No questionable circles. No ties to anyone who might harm her. There was nothing in her life that should have drawn the attention of a man like Vincent Caruso. Yet it did. He read the report twice, then a third time, stopping at one detail. She had transferred schools 3 times in 2 years because she couldn't keep up with tuition while supporting her brother. She still pushed through it. She still passed every class. She still worked double shifts most weekends. That morning, Vincent made a choice that surprised even him. He called 2 men into his office. Both married, both fathers, both loyal in ways that mattered more than loyalty to a business. He trusted them not just with his life, but with his conscience. I need eyes on someone, he told them quietly. Not pressure. Not interference. Only safety. They didn't question him. They only asked for boundaries, and he gave them the strictest he'd ever issued. No one touches her life. No one speaks to her. You are shadows only. If anyone approaches her with the wrong intentions, they are redirected quietly. If there is any threat near her building, her school, or her workplace, you neutralize it without her ever knowing. She must never feel watched. She must never feel unsafe because of us. He paused, measuring his own breath before speaking the next words. She is not to be viewed as a target or an opportunity. She is to be treated with the same respect you'd want someone to give your daughters. They understood. They didn't nod out of obligation, but acknowledgement. The moment they left, Vincent sat alone again, aware of the line he had crossed. Men like him didn't usually wait for anything. They didn't watch from the outside. They took what they wanted. His life had trained him to act quickly, decisively, sometimes ruthlessly. But Destiny did not belong in that world. She didn't move like someone shaped by power plays or threats. She moved like someone who had learned to stand tall without ever stepping on anyone else. She lived in a different kind of strength. For weeks, Vincent kept his distance. His men sent brief reports, routine details, nothing concerning. She left for school early, returned to work for the dinner rush, then helped her neighbor with groceries every Thursday. She walked alone but kept her shoulders squared, even after long shifts that left her exhausted. One night, his surveillance team sent a short message. "You'll want to see this." Curiosity pulled him downstairs to the secure monitoring room. On the screen, Destiny sat on the L train, a nursing textbook open across her lap. Her head drooped forward every few minutes, her eyes struggling to stay open. Each time her chin dipped toward her chest, she blinked herself awake and underlined a sentence. Her hands shook with fatigue. Vincent stood perfectly still. He had grown accustomed to watching men break under pressure. He'd watched men crawl, beg, lie, deceive, but he had never seen quiet perseverance like Destiny's. She wasn't performing for anyone. She was surviving. She didn't know a camera existed. She didn't know anyone cared whether she succeeded. When her head finally dropped too far and the pen slipped from her fingers, she jerked awake and whispered an apology to the elderly woman beside her, even though she had disturbed no one. Vincent felt something shift inside him, something that didn't belong to the world he built. He wasn't drawn to her because of beauty or charm, though she had both. He was drawn because she carried herself with dignity even when life demanded more from her than it gave. She reminded him of the man he once planned to become before violence crowned him king of a life he never intended to lead. That night he tightened the rules again. "No one talks to her," he repeated. "No gifts. No support she could trace back to me. She must never feel owned by anyone." His men nodded. They'd never heard him speak like this, but they understood the seriousness behind each order. Over the next weeks, Vincent's conflict grew. He read updates on her school performance, her long shifts, her late-night commutes. Every line made his chest tighten with a strange mix of pride and worry. He wanted to shield her from every hardship but knew that interfering too directly would change the way she viewed herself, and that was the last thing he wanted. He wanted her strength to remain her own. One evening, while reviewing footage alone, he realized the truth he had been trying to deny. He had fallen in love with a woman who didn't know his name, a woman he wasn't sure he deserved to meet. But the decision had already been made. He would watch her. He would protect her. He would never cross her boundaries. He would wait for the moment he could approach her honestly, even if it took years. The first year of watching Destiny tested every bit of Vincent's restraint. He had never been a passive man, yet he forced himself to act only through distance. His role became one of quiet prevention, intervening only when danger rose close enough to touch her. One cold morning in early spring, Destiny's car stalled on Lakeshore Drive. She tried to restart it twice before stepping out, stressed and shivering beside the rush of traffic. Vincent's man Ray, the father of 2 daughters and chosen for his calm nature, pulled over within minutes. He approached with open hands and a gentle tone, offering help without pressure. Destiny was hesitant at first, cautious as any woman alone on a highway should be, but Ray kept a respectful distance. He called a tow truck that had been prearranged for her route. Vincent's mechanic handled the repairs quietly, billing her a tiny fraction of the real cost. When Destiny picked up the car, she smiled in relief, unaware that the kindness had started with a man she'd never met. Later that evening, Vincent watched the footage from the shop. Not once did Destiny try to bargain or complain. She simply thanked the mechanic and drove off to another shift, focused on staying afloat. Vincent closed the laptop with a heaviness in his chest, knowing she deserved far more support than he was allowed to give. A few months later, trouble drifted closer. On a crowded Friday night, A drunk customer at Lombardi's grabbed Destiny's wrist with more force than necessary, pulling her back when she tried to step away. Vincent was upstairs in a private dining room for a meeting, his attention split between negotiations and the security monitors on the wall. When he saw the man yanking Destiny forward, something violent sparked in him, but he stayed in his seat. Rage helped no one if it spiraled into chaos. Instead, he leaned toward the manager and spoke in a low, controlled tone. The manager rushed downstairs, intervened immediately, and escorted the drunk patron out. By the end of the night, the man found himself permanently banned from the restaurant and quietly marked as someone who should rethink where he spent his evenings. Vincent never approached Destiny. He corrected danger without taking away her sense of safety or independence. Trouble returned again that year in the form of neighborhood burglaries in Bronzeville. 3 apartments in Destiny's building were hit over 2 months. Locks broken, belongings scattered, police called with no real progress. Destiny's unit, however, stayed untouched. Not a single attempt. No one lingered near her door. It wasn't luck. A message had traveled through Chicago's criminal networks. Destiny's block was under Vincent Caruso's personal protection. No one was to approach it. No one was to test that boundary. Word spread fast because the consequences of crossing him spread faster. Destiny never knew the quiet shield built around her. By the end of the first year, Vincent realized something else. He had not touched another woman since the night he first saw her. Not intentionally. Not out of duty. It simply became impossible. Beauty no longer impressed him. Attention no longer satisfied him. Desire tangled itself around only one person, and she had never spoken his name. His consigliere noticed the change by summer of the second year. "You turning down every woman in Chicago now?" the older man asked one evening, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey in Vincent's office. Vincent didn't answer right away. He stared through the floor-to-ceiling windows, taking in the city lights. "I'm waiting," he finally said. "For what?" "For the chance to be someone better." His consigliere didn't push. He simply nodded, understanding far more than Vincent intended to reveal. Midway through the second year, Destiny hit a breaking point. Tuition rose again, her workload increased, and her younger brother needed help with college application fees. Vincent saw the file before the school approved it, a request for emergency assistance, written in Destiny's straightforward, honest tone. She didn't ask for pity. She asked for a chance to stay in school. What struck Vincent hardest wasn't the request, it was the notes made by the school. Works 2 jobs. Sends money home. Never late to class. Maintains solid grades despite difficult circumstances. For the first time in years, Vincent felt tears sting his eyes. He approved the grant immediately, signing it through one of his anonymous foundations. Destiny received the money within 48 hours, and she kept her schedule intact, her progress uninterrupted. He watched the security footage from her apartment hallway as she read the email on her phone, her shoulders sinking with visible relief. He didn't smile. He simply breathed easier. The third year brought change, not to Destiny, but to Vincent. He began shifting more of his operations into legitimate business. He sold off sections of his organization that tied him too tightly to violence. He invested more heavily in his legal companies and foundations. His men questioned him, but he didn't offer explanations. He was preparing for the day he could walk into Destiny's world without pulling her into a life she didn't choose. The defining moment of that year came at Navy Pier, inside a massive hall filled with folding chairs and proud families. Destiny graduated nursing school, wearing a white dress under her gown and holding her cap with trembling hands. Vincent stood at the very back, hidden behind a column. He watched her walk across the stage, watched her smile widen as she accepted her diploma, watched the joy she shared with classmates who had become her support system. None of her success belonged to him. He had eased the path when it became dangerously narrow, but the strength that carried her to that stage was her own. That truth filled him with a quiet pride he had never experienced. Not for a deal, not for territory, but for someone who had no idea he existed in the crowd. 3 years had passed since the night he first saw her through the restaurant window. 3 years of silence. 3 years of restraint. 3 years of watching over her from a distance. And he still wasn't done waiting. Vincent Caruso's associates noticed the change almost immediately. The man who once reacted to every slight, every insult, every challenge, with immediate force had become measured, thoughtful, and unusually patient. He no longer sought confrontation. Decisions were weighed not in hours or days, but in years. Long-term consequences became more important than immediate gain. His reputation for ruthlessness remained intact, yet there was now an unexpected restraint, a careful deliberation they had never witnessed. The cause was simple, yet profound: destiny. Observing her life in small, deliberate doses had altered his understanding of struggle. For decades, Vincent had moved through the world with power as his constant companion. He had never known exhaustion in the way she did, balancing double shifts at Lombardi's, rushing between class and clinical rotations, stretching every dollar to send her younger brother money while maintaining tuition payments. Her world was one of discipline, patience, and quiet courage, none of which could be bought, coerced, or commanded. One night, Vincent watched her through the grainy security footage of her small Bronzeville apartment. She sat at the kitchen table, papers spread across the surface, a worn calculator in her hand. Every number, every bill, every expense was meticulously accounted for. She hesitated over one envelope, set it aside, and reached for another, deciding which payment could wait so her brother could attend a school trip. Vincent leaned back in his chair, aware of the millions at his disposal, yet restrained himself from interfering. For the first time in years, he realized that true care sometimes required doing nothing. Letting someone navigate their own challenges, with dignity intact, was a rare form of love. His surveillance also revealed the subtle and overt discrimination Destiny faced daily. At Lombardi's, a customer asked if she had enough experience for her role, while another requested a different server without explanation. She faced these microaggressions with quiet composure, never arguing unnecessarily, never lowering her standards. She smiled, explained politely, and carried herself with a balance of patience and self-respect. Vincent's heart clenched repeatedly at the injustices she endured, and yet he admired her resilience more than he could express. Her determination began to reshape his approach to his own charitable work. Vincent redirected funding toward scholarships for nursing students, focusing on women of color who faced systemic obstacles similar to those Destiny navigated daily. He established anonymous emergency grants at Harold Washington College to ensure students with financial crises could continue without interruption. Every decision reflected his growing understanding that support meant enabling autonomy rather than imposing solutions. The transformation was personal as well. Vincent began examining his own responses to power and control. For decades, his life had been dictated by authority, influence, and fear. Now he measured worth by the quiet, consistent strength of character he observed in Destiny. Genuine love, he realized, meant understanding the struggles of another person, witnessing them up close, and honoring their resilience without trying to erase it with money, influence, or intimidation. Love, in its truest form, demanded patience, humility, and careful observation. Preparing to approach Destiny required a new type of discipline. Vincent understood that he could not enter her life honestly while his operations remained intertwined with daily violence. His efforts toward legitimate business were no longer motivated solely by image or profit. They were essential. Each company he restructured, each foundation he strengthened, was a step toward a life where he could reveal himself to her without endangering her career, her safety, or the principles she lived by. Every evening, Vincent reviewed her routine in silence. He memorized her schedules, knew when she studied, where she went after shifts, and the small moments that defined her day. Observing her wasn't about possession. It was about preparation. He trained himself to protect from a distance, to step in only when needed, and to respect her autonomy above all else. This self-imposed discipline was more challenging than any negotiation he had conducted in Chicago's underworld. Every instinct that demanded immediate action had to be restrained, every impulse of desire tempered with patience. 3 years of this careful observation had reshaped Vincent completely. Where he had once measured success by fear and control, he now measured it by understanding, empathy, and quiet endurance. He recognized that true protection empowered rather than constrained. The man who had once conquered territories now waited silently for a chance to enter a life without violence, without coercion, without compromising the very woman who had captured his attention from afar. By the end of this period, Vincent's heart had shifted entirely. He was no longer a man acting out of ownership or ambition. He was a guardian, a patient observer, and a student of someone stronger and more courageous than he had ever encountered. And though she still did not know his name, his life had become defined by her journey, her triumphs, her challenges, and the unwavering integrity she carried in every moment. Vincent had learned that devotion could be quiet, that protection could be invisible, and that the most profound transformations sometimes occurred not in the world around him, but within his own heart. He was preparing not only to reveal himself, but to do so in a way that honored her resilience and offered a choice rooted in respect rather than force. He would approach only when he had proven he could offer the life she deserved, untainted by the danger that had defined his past. 3 years had passed since Vincent Caruso first saw Destiny Williams working behind the counter at Lombardi's. The cold January wind bit at his face, but he barely noticed as he stood outside the restaurant, a black Lincoln Town car parked discreetly nearby. The city streets were quiet at this late hour, the snow reflecting the dim streetlights. It was the same month and the same icy chill as the night that had begun his silent devotion. Now, the time had come to leave the shadows behind. Destiny, now 27, had graduated from Harold Washington College and worked at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She still covered weekend shifts at Lombardi's, determined to pay off student loans without burdening her family. Her younger brother had just begun his freshman year at the University of Illinois, a milestone that brought quiet satisfaction to Vincent. He had observed every step of their lives, ensuring safety and support without interference, always with patience. Vincent straightened his tailored suit and stepped closer to the entrance. His approach was deliberate. He spoke her name softly as she stepped outside, returning to the sidewalk after closing duties. She froze, instinctively alert, her eyes scanning him carefully. The difference this time was unmistakable. She did not feel immediate danger. There was recognition of intention, of honesty, that she could sense without understanding its depth. "Destiny," he said again, slower now, offering calm reassurance. "My name is Vincent Caruso. I've spent 3 years watching over you, not to control, not to manipulate, but to make sure you moved through the world safely while maintaining your independence. I've waited until I could approach honestly, without forcing my world into yours." Destiny's expression shifted from curiosity to a quiet caution. Vincent reached into his pocket and handed her a card. Only his name and a phone number were printed. "Whatever you decide, my protection continues. You may have noticed your car sensor was faulty a few weeks ago, and I arranged for a mechanic to take care of it. That's just one example. I've acted without interference, respecting your choices." She examined the card, eyes tracing the crisp lettering, the weight of the gesture pressing quietly against her understanding of him. Vincent studied her face, noting the small signs of fatigue, the firmness of her posture, and the intelligence in her eyes. He spoke with honesty, each word carefully chosen. "You're remarkable, Destiny. Not because I've watched, but because of what I've witnessed. how you move through the world with dignity, care, and strength. Whatever you decide about me, never doubt your worth." There was a pause, a moment that stretched longer than it should have in the cold January night. Destiny said nothing, only observing him. Vincent did not step closer or urge a response. He had learned that real devotion required patience. He would not demand her attention, nor would he claim her time. His role, until she chose otherwise, was to offer her safety and the truth of his intentions. Without another word, Vincent stepped back, allowing her space. The black Lincoln's engine whispered to life behind him. He turned toward the street, melting into the night traffic as quietly as he had appeared. His presence lingered longer than his physical form, a silent promise that he would remain vigilant, respectful, and honest. Destiny stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, card in hand, processing the revelation of 3 years of protection and unseen care. Nothing in her life had prepared her for such a gesture, a powerful man revealing himself not to dominate or coerce, but to offer honesty and a choice. The city around her was quiet, the wind sharp, but within that moment, a new understanding settled. Vincent Caruso had waited, observed, and acted with an integrity that transcended his reputation, giving her the first real opportunity to decide. That night, Vincent returned to his apartment with a clarity he had never known. Every business decision, every action, had led to this moment. His devotion, practiced silently and patiently, had finally reached the point where he could stand openly, truthfully, before the woman who had unknowingly changed his life. He did not know what her choice would be, but he understood that revealing himself honestly was the only way to proceed. The next step would depend entirely on her, and he was prepared to wait as long as necessary. For 3 years, he had protected, observed, and restrained himself. Now, for the first time, Vincent Caruso had left the shadows and offered the truth without expectation. Destiny held the card in her hand, a tangible token of quiet devotion that demanded no immediate response, yet carried the weight of years. The night, bitter with cold, held the quiet promise of possibility, the first of many choices she would make on her own terms. For 2 weeks, Destiny carried Vincent Caruso's card in her purse, untouched but never far from her hand. Each night, she replayed his words in her mind, weighing the honesty in his voice against the reputation that preceded him. Fear could have been her first instinct, yet it was tempered by something else, a profound respect for the way he had waited. 3 years to take what he could have demanded, and still, he had asked for nothing. She began her investigation carefully. She spoke to acquaintances who had some knowledge of the Caruso family, framing her questions casually. She reviewed public records and news archives, tracing the outlines of his life in Chicago, his businesses, the charities he funded, the whispers of power in neighborhoods he controlled. Every piece she examined aligned with the story he had told, and small coincidences that she had previously dismissed suddenly made sense. Even as she collected facts, she reflected on her own feelings. Her life had always been measured, planned, and hard-earned. Her mother's death, her move from Detroit, the endless double shifts while attending nursing school, her support of her younger brother. Everything had shaped a woman who understood struggle and perseverance. Terror, which might have been expected when meeting a man like Vincent Caruso, never fully took hold. Instead, there was curiosity, tempered with cautious awareness. Finally, she picked up the phone. She dialed the number, her pulse quickening. Vincent answered on the first ring. His voice, steady and calm, carried recognition but no pressure. "I have questions," she said. His response was quiet but firm. "I have answers." They agreed on a dinner reservation at the Signature Room at the 95th, atop the John Hancock Center. Destiny insisted on choosing her own transportation, ensuring she could leave at any moment. The table was public, well-lit, and filled with the soft background noise of diners, giving her a sense of control even in the presence of a man whose reputation could fill entire city blocks. The dinner lasted 4 hours, each course accompanied by conversations that revealed Vincent's truth. He spoke plainly about his businesses, acknowledging the illegal ventures while emphasizing the ongoing transition toward legitimate operations. He confirmed that he had been dangerous to enemies, yet never to her. The 3 years of observation and protection were not a secret. He owned them fully, yet offered no apology for safeguarding her. The only acknowledgement of regret was for any fear that might have accompanied the revelation of his true identity. Destiny leaned forward, her hands lightly resting on the table. "Why me?" she asked, a question that cut to the heart of his devotion. Vincent looked directly at her, unflinching. 43 years of my life were spent in darkness, in a world of violence, betrayal, and constant calculation. Then I saw you, moving through the world with a grace I had not encountered in decades. The way you treat difficult customers with respect, how you slip extra bread to the man who waits near the service entrance, the calls you make to your brother every Sunday despite exhaustion. I witnessed your life quietly, without interference. I saw someone who acted with genuine kindness and strength, someone whose value is measured not by circumstance but by character. Her gaze held his as he continued. I am not asking you to fix me or save me. I am asking for the chance to prove that my devotion is real, that my protection comes without strings, and that even a man from my world can love a woman from yours with absolute sincerity. I've waited to approach you honestly because I respect your independence and your choices. The right to earn your time was never mine to claim, it was something I would earn. Destiny listened, absorbing every word. There was an honesty that contrasted sharply with the stories she had gathered about him. It was one thing to know the reputation, another to feel the years of patient restraint and thoughtful care. The fear she had imagined melted into an understanding that his actions were guided not by desire for control, but by a measured respect for her life and autonomy. She did not commit to anything that night. There was no sudden declaration, no dramatic acceptance. Instead, she made a decision grounded in patience and reason. She would continue talking with him, allow his actions to prove the truth of his words, and observe whether his respect and devotion held steady. That choice, measured and deliberate, reflected the strength of a woman who had navigated hardship on her own terms and would continue to do so, even in the presence of a man capable of wielding great power. As she left the signature room, she held the memory of his words closely. The quiet honesty, the acknowledgement of her life's challenges, and the promise of continued respect marked the beginning of a new chapter. Vincent had shown her the depth of his patience and the consistency of his devotion. Destiny's choice was not made lightly, it would be confirmed over time, through actions that mirrored words. For the first time since she met him in person, she felt the possibility that someone from a world so different from her own could love her not by force, but with intention, respect, and honesty. She stepped into the cool night air, cards still in hand, and made her decision, to allow him the chance to prove the sincerity of his commitment, beginning a cautious, deliberate path forward together. The following 6 months unfolded quietly yet deliberately. Vincent and Destiny settled into a rhythm that felt familiar and new all at once. They shared dinners at small, lively restaurants, conversations stretching past the hours the city seemed to hold. They walked along the lakefront path, the lights from Navy Pier reflecting in the water, reaching toward the Museum of Science and Industry, each step a gentle negotiation of distance and trust. Concerts at Millennium Park filled other evenings, music forming a bridge between worlds so different yet so cautiously intertwined. Vincent's approach was deliberate. He invited Destiny into parts of his life he could expose without risk, showing her legitimate business operations and charitable foundations, each initiative carefully built over the past years to ensure transparency and security. At no point did he hide the past or the ongoing complexities of his network, yet he made clear his commitment to reduce harm and move steadily toward lawful enterprise. Destiny, for her part, demanded boundaries, and Vincent honored them without hesitation. When she asked to move slowly, he did. When she sought counsel to protect her nursing career, He connected her with trusted legal advisors. He introduced her to his brother and closest associates only in spaces of her choosing, answering every probing question with calm honesty, never pressing, never insisting. Trust was not assumed, it was earned day by day. Half a year into their courtship, a test arrived that neither could ignore. A rival family, having tracked Vincent's actions, interpreted his patience and careful honesty as weakness. A note arrived at Destiny's apartment: "Caruso's weakness is now ours." The warning was clear, and for a moment, the weight of Vincent's world threatened to intrude on her life. Vincent acted quickly, yet deliberately. Within 48 hours, the threat had been neutralized. There was no public spectacle, no display of unnecessary force. The rival family, confronted and reminded of the consequences of crossing him, offered a formal apology and assurances that Destiny would remain untouched. He ensured her that no harm would ever reach her, but he did so without turning her home into a fortress or her life into fear. Afterward, Vincent visited Destiny's Bronzeville apartment. Not entering without invitation, respecting her independence, but sitting in the living room with her across from him. He laid the choice clearly before her. "This is my world," he said quietly, his hands resting lightly on the table. "I can protect you from it, but I cannot pretend it does not exist. If this is not a life you can accept, I will ensure your permanent safety and step back. My protection does not end if you choose to walk away." Destiny studied him, weighing every word against the past 3.5 years. She remembered the nights when he had quietly ensured her safety, the small gestures of help and support that had gone unnoticed by others. She thought of the integrity he showed in all things, the patience he displayed, and the honesty that had never wavered. Her voice was calm but firm. "I'm not weak, Vincent," she said. "I'm a nurse. Every shift I work, I deal with life and death, with violence and trauma. I'm not afraid of your world. The only thing I fear is dishonesty. As long as you remain honest with me, as long as you continue showing the respect you've shown for 3.5 years, I am choosing to stay." Vincent listened, silent, feeling a weight lift from him that he had carried without realizing. He did not respond with a flourish, with promises or declarations, because none were necessary. Her choice, measured and deliberate, reflected the trust she had placed in him, and it confirmed his own patience, proving that devotion could be demonstrated through consistency and restraint rather than demand or assertion. The following months were filled with quiet demonstrations of respect and partnership. Walks along the lakefront continued, evening talks stretched into the early hours, and Vincent integrated Destiny gradually into his world in ways that did not compromise her safety or autonomy. Every interaction was rooted in transparency, every gesture in acknowledgement of the trust she had granted him. Even amid these months of ordinary life, there was awareness of danger, the knowledge that Vincent's world could still intrude. Yet each time an obstacle presented itself, he resolved it efficiently and without spectacle. The consistency of these actions, small and large, reinforced the promise he had made: protection and devotion without coercion. Destiny came to understand that in him, patience and honesty were not mere words, they were the foundation of every choice he made regarding her life. Their bond, tested by circumstance and choice, strengthened through shared experiences and careful observation of each other's character. Where fear might have been expected, mutual respect grew. Where power could have demanded obedience, Vincent learned restraint. Where curiosity could have turned to control, Destiny's insistence on honesty shaped every decision he made. By the end of these 6 months, both recognized the delicate balance of trust and vigilance that had become the basis for their connection, and both understood that the tests they had endured only confirmed the strength and depth of their bond. 1 year had passed since the dinner at the signature room. The months had been filled with quiet affirmations of trust and respect, small moments of patience and honesty, until the time came for Vincent to take the final step. He invited Destiny to Navy Pier on a bitter January evening, The same month he had first seen her standing behind the counter at Lombardi's. The pier was nearly deserted, the wind sweeping off Lake Michigan with sharp intensity. They walked together, shoulders brushing, both sensing the weight of the day without speaking. At the far end of the pier, Vincent stopped. He turned to face her, his gaze steady, unwavering despite the cold. Behind them, the Chicago skyline glimmered against the night, a reminder of the city that had shaped both their lives in different ways. He took a deep breath and spoke, his voice low but certain. 4 years ago tonight, I saw you for the first time. I've spent every day since devoted to you in some way. At first from a distance, now by your side. You've made me better, Destiny. She listened quietly, feeling the weight of his words, aware of the years of unseen care and protection. Vincent continued, explaining that he was not offering a storybook promise or a flawless life. He spoke instead of the devotion he had built steadily, through patience, honesty, and efforts to shape a life in which she could exist safely, respected, and free. Every act of protection, every gesture of consideration, every choice to restrain his own impulses had been part of a deliberate path to this moment. He reached into the pocket of his tailored coat and knelt on the frozen wood beneath him. The wind tugged at their coats, cutting across the pier, but his focus never wavered. He held out a ring, an emerald surrounded by diamonds, chosen carefully to reflect her birthstone, a detail as personal as it was deliberate. Destiny felt the significance of every step he had taken, the years of unseen devotion crystallized in this single moment. She saw in him a man who had learned restraint, honesty, and reverence for another's world. With a steady voice, full of certainty, she spoke. Yes. I'll have your name, your devotion, and your honesty. And you'll have mine in return. He lifted her hand, slipping the ring onto her finger. There was no flourish, no dramatization, only quiet, absolute commitment. The kiss that followed carried the weight of the past 4 years, a claim not of possession but of partnership. The wind howled around them, sharp against their cheeks, but neither felt it. The city beyond the pier, the lights and the cold, faded from immediate concern. For the first time, both were fully present, fully aligned in choice and trust. 6 months later, they held a small ceremony at Fourth Presbyterian Church on Michigan Avenue. The wedding merged both worlds. Vincent's closest family and associates attended alongside Destiny's colleagues from the hospital and her friends from school. The ceremony was simple, dignified, and deeply personal. Every vow spoken reflected the reality of their journey: truth, patience, and unwavering respect. The reception continued quietly, elegant yet unpretentious, filled with laughter that was grounded and real. Conversations crossed worlds but remained free from pretense. Vincent made certain that Destiny's independence was honored throughout the day, while she carried herself with a grace that reflected both her accomplishments and the care she had taken in choosing this life. By the end of the evening, there was an understanding between them, unspoken but complete. Their partnership had been built carefully, deliberately, over years. It was a union chosen from respect, protected by honesty, and strengthened by the patience of two people learning how to bridge separate lives without compromise of character or values. The ring on Destiny's finger was more than a symbol of engagement. It was a testament to the years of devotion, vigilance, and thoughtful preparation that had led to this point. The kiss, the vows, and the quiet celebration on Michigan Avenue marked not only the culmination of a story but the beginning of a life built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and enduring commitment. Even amid the cold January wind and the shimmering lights of Chicago, it was clear that their choice had been deliberate, informed, and earned. Vincent's years of restraint, honesty, and protection had been rewarded not through fear or obligation, but through the willing partnership of a woman who had observed, understood, and ultimately chosen to share her life with him. In that moment, standing together at the edge of the pier, looking toward the city that had witnessed their separate struggles, both recognized the depth of what they had built. It was a life grounded not in spectacle or force, but in consistent action, patient devotion, and respect for each other's world. The claim had been made, not by assertion, but by the deliberate, shared choice of two people ready to navigate the future together. 5 years had passed since Vincent and Destiny exchanged vows. Destiny's life had settled into a rhythm of purpose and dedication. She continued her career at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, now specializing in emergency medicine. Her colleagues were aware that she was married to a man with complex business connections, yet her professional reputation remained untouchable. Each shift she worked reflected her skill, her calm under pressure, and the compassion that had always defined her. Vincent, meanwhile, had completed much of the transformation he had begun years earlier. He retained only the enterprises necessary to maintain his family position but dedicated significant effort to legitimate ventures. His charitable foundations had grown, quietly providing scholarships and emergency funding, becoming a cornerstone of the legacy he intended to leave. Both worlds, Vincent's business network and Destiny's medical environment, found a meeting place in their Gold Coast home. The house was elegant enough for business gatherings yet warm and welcoming for Destiny's colleagues and friends. Destiny's younger brother had graduated from the University of Illinois and begun law school, fully funded by Vincent. He pursued work as a public defender, representing those overlooked by society. Vincent had insisted that the family's resources be used to create opportunity, not dependency. Their lives demonstrated lessons learned over years. Patience, proven by 3 years of silent devotion, became the truest measure of love. True protection empowered rather than controlled, and transformation required consistent action rather than sudden gestures. Honesty proved more valuable than perfection, and strength recognized strength. They had built a life that required bridge building between worlds, showing that love across differences could succeed when grounded in respect, transparency, and shared values. Despite the stability, their reality was never simple. Vincent's past meant constant management of potential threats and rivalries, yet the foundation of their relationship remained unshakable. The 3 years he had watched and protected Destiny had not been about possession or control. They had been about learning to serve rather than take, to protect rather than dominate, and to earn the right to be part of someone's life through consistent, thoughtful action. Destiny's choice had not been one of naivete. She had observed, understood, and demanded honesty. She chose partnership because she recognized genuine devotion and a willingness to meet her world on equal terms. Her strength and clarity reinforced the lessons Vincent had learned, that love is proven through restraint, patience, and unwavering respect. On the 5th anniversary of their engagement, Vincent and Destiny returned to Navy Pier. They stood at the same spot where he had proposed, looking out over Lake Michigan at the Chicago skyline. The wind tugged at their coats, sharp and cold, yet it carried a sense of continuity and permanence. They held hands, taking in the city that had shaped both their lives, and allowed themselves a quiet moment to reflect on the years of careful choice, devotion, and work that had brought them here. The pier, the skyline, and the night reflected their shared journey. Every challenge, every act of protection, and every gesture of honesty had led to this life. They had built something tangible and lasting, a relationship founded on trust, patience, and intentional devotion, a life in which both could thrive without compromise to character or independence. Vincent and Destiny turned from the water, their faces reflecting satisfaction and pride. Their story illustrated that real love does not demand perfection. It requires patience, absolute honesty, and a commitment to prove one's worth through consistent action. Their world, shaped by deliberate choices and mutual respect, served as a reminder that the depth of a relationship is measured not in dramatic gestures, but in the quiet, steadfast efforts that show care, understanding, and integrity over time. They walked back along the pier, hands clasped, ready to face whatever challenges remained, knowing they had built a life grounded in values, choice, and partnership. The city lights shimmered behind them, a testament to a shared life carefully constructed from patience, devotion, and unwavering honesty. If this story resonates, subscribe to the channel and share where you're watching from in the comments. Tomorrow, another story awaits that will challenge, inspire, and move you, continuing the celebration of lives shaped by courage, integrity, and enduring devotion.